Hi friends, today we'll discuss an important current affairs topic, that is with respect to the refugee and asylum policy of India. Does really India have any refugee and asylum policy? Does it really India needs any refugee and asylum policy? And what is this refugees and asylum? What the world conventions are saying about this? What is India's track record on this refugee and asylum providing? And why India is not interested in bringing a specific legislation on this? And what are the concerns for the India? And how India should proceed forward on this refugee and asylum policy? So, does India really needs any refugee and the asylum policy? So before you understand this, what is this policy and why you need this policy, first of all we'll discuss this term refugee and the term asylum seeker. The term refugee and the term asylum seeker. The term refugee means refugee is a person who has fled their country, who has fled their own country because they are at the risk of serious human rights violations and persecution. Suppose if a person has persecuted in his own country and his rights are violated seriously in that country, and if he fled from his own country, we will call that person as a refugee. So that means now the refugee means the person is moving out of his own country because he is facing some serious persecution and also the fundamental rights violations, and mostly the rights violation that is happening for him in that country. That means their own government is not protecting their rights. It is not always be necessary that the government is taking away their rights. Government is not necessarily to take away their rights, but government is not in a position to protect their rights, and government is not in a position to stop their persecution. So their rights can be violated and they can be persecuted under different circumstances. Suppose if it is a civil war, suppose if it is a military rule, suppose if it is a rule of dictator, suppose if it is clashes or conflict between the two groups in the country, or if some other country has attacked your own country, or if any serious natural disaster happens and your rights are violated and your government is not in a position to take care about you. So these are all the reasons. These are all the reasons for that violation of the rights and persecution. In the sense, it can be religious persecution, it can be a persecution by any political persecution, it can be persecution by any of the aristocratic classes, or the persecution by some of the affluent sections in the society. It can be any persecution. So if at all any person or group of persons, if their rights are violated or if they are persecuted and the governments of that country is not in a position to secure or protect their rights and stop their persecution, if they are moving away from their country, then you call those people as refugees. So refugee means it has its own a broader meaning. In any of the case, whatever I have told, in all that cases we call them as refugees. It's not that only when only the religious persecution is happened we can call them as refugees. No, whenever they are persecuted on any ground and whenever their rights are violated and the governments are not in a position to protect their rights, then they are leaving the country, and those people we call it as refugees. Next, asylum seeker. Asylum seeker means it's almost same that of the definition of the refugee. It's almost same that of the definition of the refugee. But here the asylum seeker means the one who undergone this persecution and violation of right, he is seeking another country, that I want to stay in your country because in my country there is no freedom to me and I am being persecuted in my country. So please give some shelter to me. Give some shelter to me. That process we call it as asylum seeking. But when it comes to the asylum seeking, the moment when you ask the asylum, they don't give automatically. That means suppose if someone comes to India and if they seek asylum, we have to verify whether his rights are violated or not, whether he has undergone for religious or any persecution or not. But whereas once you declare someone as a refugee, whereas if you declare someone as a refugee, then automatically his rights are violated and he has persecuted. Can be anything, he has violated or persecuted. But whereas when it comes to the asylum seeking, whatever the claim that the asylum seeker is claiming, that claims has not verified yet. Not verified yet. And not every asylum seeker will go on to be recognized as a refugee. It's not necessary. So every asylum seeker need not be a refugee, because refugee means whatever the right violation has completely recognized, but here it is not recognized. Some of the individuals come and they will seek asylum. Some of the individuals, like suppose if you take some writers like Taslima Nasreen in Bangladesh, she has some liberal values and she has written something and there was a threat, immediately she came and she sought asylum. And Indian government has provided it. That's a different story. So asylum seekers' claims yet to be evaluated, but whereas refugees means their criteria has completely evaluated and approved. So this is the difference between refugees and asylum seekers. Now, why actually these refugees and asylum seekers are very, very important? Very, very important. See, these asylum seekers and refugees they are something to promote the value of universal brotherhood. Universal brotherhood. Suppose if any of the person which may not be belongs to your own country, but he is living outside and suddenly something happened and he is coming towards you like, please provide some shelter to me. And if you provide, that shows a greater human value. So in order to promote a humanitarian value system, United Nations in the year 1951, they have drafted a convention called UN Convention on Refugees. So in the year 1951, the UN Convention on Refugees were adopted at the United Nations level, and this convention came into effect from 1954 onwards. And this convention is going to provide some rights to the refugees. I will come to that little bit late. But today if you see the world, the world is full of conflicts. That conflict may be the internal conflict, the conflict may be external conflict, in the sense two groups in the country, they are fighting with each other, and in that process some people are losing their rights or some people are persecuted. In some country the majorities are trying to suppress the minorities. In some countries, one country is attacking the another country. In some countries there is a civilian revolution to bring the democracy, they are fighting against their own autocratic ruler. And in some countries there is no governance system, it is completely an anarchy. And in some countries there are serious environmental challenges that are posing, whether it is sea level rise or whether it is continuous flooding or continuous drought. And even in some countries there is a serious, the effects like earthquakes, And in some countries there is no proper governance structure, and that is the reason why people are finding very difficult to have a food. So because of these conflicts, every year millions of people moving from one country to another country, There is another term for this moving from one country to another country called migration. But migration is not because of your rights violation and persecution. Migration is because of better facilities, or find some economic opportunities, or to find a better way of living, to find the better livelihood conditions. So this is for the migration, and migration is always legal. You will take approval from your own government, and you will take the approval from the government, from the country to which you want to enter. But whereas when it comes to these refugees, because of these continuous conflicts, they don't know where to go. And we have seen how the people have completely fled from this Gulf region, and especially this Syria and Iraq region, to the European countries through that Mediterranean Sea. And you have seen what happened on the coast of the North African coast, and as well as the southern European countries coast. So how some of the people are completely submerged in the middle of the ocean. So there are some serious problems are there. This is a very pathetic condition, like there are lot of conflicts are there. Today's world is a world of complete conflict, and because of that people are either persecuted in their country, or otherwise they have lost their rights. And that is the reason why in search of life, forget about livelihood, in search of life they are approaching the different countries. That is the reason why this convention has lot of importance in today's world. In today's world it is very important. And that is the reason why in the year 1951 itself we have drafted a convention. And why it has necessitated to draft the convention way back in the 1951 itself? Because in the post Second World War period, some of the countries are devastated, and the people of that country, they don't have a food, and they don't have a proper shelter. That is the reason why they have fled to different countries. At that point of time we decided, like, no, these people we must consider with some sort of humanity. That is the reason why you must have some sort of convention, and that is how we have brought in the year 1951, and it came into force from 1954, that we will call it as United Nations Convention on Refugees. United Nations Convention on Refugees. And there was an amendment brought to this in the year 1967. We will call it as a protocol of this United Nations Convention on Refugees, 1951, 1954, 1967. It's an amendment. We can call it as protocol. Now what this convention says? This convention is saying, like, it is defining who is a refugee. That means whatever the definition that I have given, that is the refugee. And what type of assistance these refugees are going to get, what type of rights these refugees are going to get, and what type of legal protection they are going to get. That suppose if they suddenly enter into another country, you cannot simply throw them away, like, no, you are not belongs to my country, why you are entering? No. Suppose if that country is a signatory to that 1951 United Nations Convention on Refugees, then they must provide some sort of assistance, they must provide some rights, they must provide some sort of legal protection to the refugees that are entering into their country. And the main protection, and one more thing is, whenever you are defining this refugee, the war criminals, that means who involved in the war and who has committed atrocities, who has killed somebody, who has done criminal activity in this war, those people are not considered under the refugee. That means the victims of the war can be considered as a refugee, but the one who himself involved in the war, you cannot consider them as the refugees. You can't give protection to them, but only to the victims. That is what the convention says. And here these refugees are going to have a right called right not to be expelled, right not to be expelled, or right not to be deported, right not to be expelled or right not to be deported. That means those who are entering into this country, they don't have a right to expel from that country. That means you must accept the people, you should not send it back because they are in a crisis. Because they are in a crisis. That is what you need to understand. This is one right they are having. And apart from that, they don't have a, they have a right called right not to be punished, right not to be punished. That means just because they are entering into the country, if you want to punish them, then that is not there under this convention. If they, once they enter into the country, if they committed any crime, that's a different story. But the point is, just because they enter into the country, you can't consider it as, you cannot punish them, you can't punish them. So that is right not to be punished and right not to be expelled. These are the two exclusive rights these people have under this convention. And apart from that, they have a right to work. They have a right to work. They have a right to housing. They have a right to housing. That means they must have a house. It doesn't necessary that government should construct the house and give it to them. If at all they want to construct a house, they have a right to construct their own house. And they have a right to education. They have a right to education. Here we are not saying like government must educate them. No. If they wanted to educate, we must provide that right to them. And they have a right to movement. That means they can move across the country. That means they must have that right. You must provide some sort of movement right. You can't confine them in a particular locality. They have that right to movement. And they have a right to access to courts. They have a right to access to courts. And even they have a right to religion. So suppose if some religious, ex-religious countries and ex-religious, if the people are entering into a country which are professing some ex-religion, and the majority of the religion of this country is why, you cannot say like, okay, you can enter into my country, but you have to follow only my religion. You are not supposed to say. They must have their own right, their right to have their own religion or profess their own religion. So these are the different rights. And right to public relief and assistance. That means they must get relief and they must get some sort of assistance. So that assistance, relief, religion, work, housing, education, movement, access to the courts, and not to be expelled and not to be punished. These are some of the rights that are provided under the United Nations Convention on Refugees, which were adopted in the year 1951 and entered into force from 1954. So this is what exactly the convention, and this convention is having lot of relevance in present day world context, because we are seeing like how it is happening in the Ukraine. I think around 26 lakh people have already fled the Ukraine country. So who has to provide the assistance? If every country says that no, don't come to my country, then you can imagine what happened to those people. So that is why with that humanitarian principle we have drafted this convention. Now the question is, does India is a signatory to this convention? So does India is a signatory to this convention? India is not a signatory to the convention. That means India has not signed that convention. So whatever the rules and regulations or rights that we have been discussing till now is not applicable to India, because India has not signed that convention. And why India has not signed, I will come to that later. Why India has not signed it in the 1951 and why India is not interested to sign today, I will come to that point little bit later. But the point is, India has not signed. When India has not signed, then India no need to abide with what are the things just I have discussed now. That is the reason why there is no legal sanction on India to provide the asylum to any of the refugees. But does really India provided any asylum to any of the people in the history? Even from the ancient time, India has a source of many of the people. India has given host to the both invaders and as well as the refugees and even to the migrants also. There is a there is a philosophy in India called Atiti Devo Bhava. That means we will respect the guest whoever is coming to our country. So that is how our entire Indian philosophy and our value system has built up. Though we haven't signed this United Nations Convention on Refugees, we don't have a particular legislation to deal with these refugees and asylum in India. So we haven't signed the international convention and we haven't brought any specific legislation in our country. But our value system is completely loaded with a principle called Atiti Devo Bhava, and because of that value system, though India has not signed the convention, though India don't have a legislation, it has provided asylum to many people. And according to United Nations High Commission for Refugees, more than 250,000 people, more than 250,000 refugees were there in India. More than 250,000 refugees are there in India, and not every refugee is recognized by this UNHCR, and some of the people are not recognized by the UNHCR, but India is providing asylum to many people. And if at all I want to give, even before the Christ, that is in BC period, even before the Christ, we have given asylum to the Jewish people. When Jewish are persecuted in their own homeland by the Babylonians and also the other people, at that point of time, India has provided asylum to the Jewish people, and India has provided an asylum to Zoroastrians, that means the Parsis. When Iran was Islamized, then some of the Parsis came to India, they have settled in India. Today they have become the big businessmen and they are doing well in India. India has provided asylum to the victims of partition of our own country, India, Bangladesh and India and Pakistan, victims of partition. We have provided asylum, and we have provided the asylum to the victims of Sri Lanka. That means Sri Lankan refugees are there in our country. Myanmar refugees are there. In our country. Nepal refugees are there in our country. Afghanistan refugees are there in our country. Pakistan refugees are there in our country. And our country has provided asylum to some of the people from the African continent also, like Sudan, Somalia. So that means even though India has not signed that agreement, even though India don't have a specific legislation to deal with the refugees and asylum seeking, but India has provided an asylum to many people and who are persecuted or whose rights are violated in their respective country. And even Tibet, this is one of the important. So Tibetan, this has led to the war between India and China. It's not a war, but it's an aggression by the China. So that means this is, but still why we are, though India is having a good record on this providing asylum, but why some people are insisting that India must have a law? Why we are demanding for India must have a law? Because when these refugees enter into India, when you have given an asylum, simply you will give asylum. A simple asylum is not sufficient for them. Asylum means you are saying like, okay, you stay here, but you don't grant any specific rights to them. That doesn't mean that all these people are simply staying in India, they don't exercise any rights in India. Some of the people are Indianized over a period of time. But some of the people still, they are confusing about their identity. And here some of the people are treated very well, some of the people are not treated that well, some of the people have given rights to some extent, some of the people has not given rights to some extent, because you don't have the uniformity in your refugees policies, because of lack of legislation, because of lack of vision, because of lack of policy uniformity, we are dealing with these refugees in an ad hoc manner. So because of lack of uniformity in our policies, because of no legislation in our country, so we are dealing in an ad hoc manner. Ad hoc manner in the sense, if someone is entering into the country, we are simply asking them, okay, you please stay here and just have some rights, like just attend to the some work and gain some amount of money, and later you can go for some schools and get access to the health. Likewise, we are giving individually to individual type of people. So because of that reason, not all the refugees are maintaining, or not all the refugees are recipient of similar treatment, because of there is no uniformity in our policy, because there is no specific legislation in our country. Then you may ask a question, sir, is there any provision in our statute to clearly define who is a migrant, who is a foreigner, and who is a refugee? The thing we have is, in our country we are having the different legislations, but those legislations are dealing only to decide whether you are an Indian or whether you are a foreigner. That is the only thing we can do, and we can consider all of them as aliens. Aliens means that they are not belongs to India. I will give just some of the acts so that you can understand. See, the first act is Foreigners Act 1946. Foreigners Act 1956. We are having this legislation, but this legislation decides who is a foreigner and who is an Indian. Registration of Foreigners Act. Registration of the Foreigners Act 1939. 1939. Next we have another act called Passport Act of 1967. Passport Act of 1967. Next we have another act called Extradition Act of 1962. Extradition, that's sending back. Extradition Act of 1962. Next, Citizenship Act of 1955. Citizenship Act of 1955. So these are some of the legislation. But these legislations are dealing about only to identify whether you are an Indian or a foreigner. Suppose if you are a foreigner, do you have a proper documents with you, and how many days you are going to stay in this country, and are you following the proper rules and regulations? Are you staying in India beyond the expiration of your visas? Only those things they will check. But if someone comes into India without any valid document, and that too they are coming to India because of the persecution and the violation of their rights, these acts they don't deal about that. And suppose if you have a document but it got expired, then you will send them back. Or suppose they are wantedly staying in India, you will put them for punishment. So, but these laws they don't deal about this refugee and asylum problem. Okay. So, if at all we want to provide the rights to these people, definitely we need to form a uniform policies, or you need to bring a legislation which treats all the refugees in a uniform manner. Now, under the international law, we have seen like the refugees have some rights and duties. Simply providing the asylum may not confer much rights to them. So, if you simply provide the asylum, you may not provide much rights to them. So, the basic public services, the basic public amenities, job, livelihood, those are necessary aspect. Now, okay, India has not signed any international India has not signed the international convention on these refugees. Then you no need to allow anybody to India. Is this argument correct? Is this argument correct? So, we are not ready to identify someone as a refugees under the convention, but apart from that convention, we have provided asylum to so many people, but we don't want to sign that. But there is another obligation on India to provide minimum facilities to the people who entered into your India. Forget about whether legally entered or illegally entered, but if someone has entered into your country, you must provide some sort of rights and some sort of assistance to the people of the refugees, not because you haven't signed the UN Convention on Refugees, but you have signed the other convention. Because under the other convention, you have promised to the entire world that you will protect some of the basic rights of the people. And those conventions are the first one, the United Nations Convention on the United Nations Declaration, the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, Declaration on Human Rights, 1948. Second convention what we have signed is International Convention on the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, both civil and political rights. This convention also we have signed 1966, and we have signed an international convention on this International Convention on the economic, social and cultural, economic, social, cultural, that means we say like cultural rights. Actually it was in the 1966, but we haven't signed it in the 1966, we have signed it in the 1979. 1979. Next, there was another convention called, actually we have signed it but we haven't ratified it, United Nations Convention Against the Torture, UN Convention Against Torture, Against Torture. So what is this UN Convention Against the Torture? UN Convention Against the Torture means you are not supposed to deport a person to a place where he is having a threat to be persecuted or is going to be persecuted. Suppose someone enter into your country, you are not supposed to send that person to his own country or another country where he is having a threat of persecution or where he is going to be tortured. You are not supposed to send. But anyhow, we haven't ratified it. We signed it in the year 1997. Actually, this convention is of 1984. But whereas when it comes to the Declaration on Human Rights, Declaration of Civil and Political Rights, and International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, we said like, okay, we will accept some of the rights of the people, irrespective of their nationality. So maybe under this also India is obliged to have provide some sort of relief to the people. But India is saying like, I am not saying like I don't provide, but I don't sign that convention, I don't take every refugee into my country. But Indian Constitution also says, and you know that according to the Indian Constitution, some of the fundamental rights also applicable to the Indians and as well as the foreigners. Those who are in India, for them these rights are applicable. Take the case of Article 14. Take the case of Article 14 is right to equality. Article 21 is about right to life and personal liberty. And when it comes to the Article 22, this is right to arrest and detain. They will have some rights when you are arresting and detaining. Under Article 21, you have a right called right to free trial under the part of right to life. So they have a right called right to fair trial. So these are also provided to the foreigners. At least under this also we need to provide some sort of relief to the migrant people. This is what some of the people arguing. Some of the people arguing. And some of the people are saying like, see, whatever you have been following till these many days, What you are doing morally, just do it legally. What you are doing morally, just do it legally. We are not saying like India's track record is bad, no. India has done very well on this front of providing asylum to the many people. Our culture itself, our moral value system is that we have provided, we have given asylum to the many people, but we have done it morally, but we don't have a legal framework. We don't have a legal framework. So now what you have done morally, just do it legally with this practice, by signing the convention, and at the same time by bringing a law. That's what we are saying. And one more thing, sometimes I cannot always say it's like government is really so good and they have done lot of good things to these refugees. It is government is having track records on both the sides. We have treated well many people, and at the same time we haven't treated some people also. Suppose if at all I want to give an example, the Chakma Buddhist of Chittagong region, this Chakma, they are Buddhists of Chittagong region, they were in Mizoram, Arunachal Pradesh, in some states they are. When they were in Arunachal Pradesh, at that point of time, that state government wanted to expel these people from that state. Then immediately Supreme Court intervened, and Supreme Court said like, until and unless their asylum applications are decided, you are not supposed to send them away. That is what the Supreme Court intervention in case of this Chakma case. And at that point of time, National Human Rights Commission went to the Supreme Court, and in that National Human Rights Commission case, in the year 1995, the Supreme Court has given a judgment like the Supreme Court restrained the state when regarding their expulsion as long until their asylum application is decided. So that is what Supreme Court intervention. And Supreme Court not only intervened in this case, they have intervened in different cases. Guwahati High Court has given lot of judgment, whether it is related to the Manipur, whether it is related to the Mizoram. And in one case, Guwahati High Court has given a judgment like, refugees have a right not to be deported if their life is in danger. So Supreme Court went to such an extent like, the refugees have a right not to be deported if their rights are in danger. And the same Supreme Court has given a different type of tendered a different type of opinion in case of the Rohingyas. The Rohingyas has to be deported. But the point is, there are both plus and minuses are there. So the Supreme Court has given some judgment, and even when it comes to these Tamilian refugees, that means the refugees in Tamil Nadu, and after assassination of Rajiv Gandhi and later years of 1980s decade, many people were deported from India to Sri Lanka. And though most of the people agree that there is no coercion involved in that, but still that has become some sort of remark for the Indian government, like some atrocities are committed in deporting the people from Tamil Nadu to Sri Lanka, in both post Rajiv Gandhi's assassination and as well as in the later 1980s. So that means we are having the mix of both the things. We have provided asylum to many people, and at the same time our Supreme Court, our High Courts, and even National Human Rights Commission has really worked well on this front of refugees. And as far as providing the asylum or protecting the rights of refugees, though we don't have a clear law. So the judiciary with its innovative judicial interpretation established several rights for these refugees, and they have prevented the deportation of the people. And the Supreme Court sometimes say like, they have a right to be refoulement in the sense you are sending them back, so they have a right to be non-refoulement, they have a right to dignified life. It's not a simple life, so they must also have that dignified life. This is what India's judiciary has said at some point of time. So that is why some people are arguing like, India need a sustained refugee policy, and as well as this asylum policy, because you are going to face this problem, because the entire world has become the completely volatile, and you don't know when conflicts will happen in which region of the world. You may get any time, but if you try to deal in an ad hoc manner, then all the people may not be subjected to the equal amount of rights. Equal amount of rights. And some people are arguing like perhaps India knows better about these refugees problem, because historically India has been providing to the asylum to the many people, and India itself is surrounded with lot of conflicts region, whether it is Pakistan, Afghanistan and Sri Lanka at one point of time, and at one point of time Bangladesh, and at one point of time Tibet, Nepal. So India knows it very well, the problems of refugees, and not only because it is in that region, but because India has taken up lot of peacekeeping missions. Because India is one of the large contributor of the forces to this peacekeeping operation at the United Nations level, and India itself is involved in this more than 40 such this peacekeeping processes, and perhaps India knows better than any other country how these people are going to be persecuted and what are the conditions of those people. So perhaps India knows better than many of the people. That is the reason why India must please, what you have done it morally, just do it legally. And lot of liberals in this country are also arguing like, please bring a law, frame a uniform law. You no need to go with the law what the 1951 is about. Maybe 1951 is having some problems, I will come to that later. But just frame your own law, to whom you want to give the asylum, to whom you don't want to give the asylum, to what extent you want to provide the right, to what extent you are not supposed to, you don't want to provide the rights. Just bring that uniform law, so that you can provide a uniform rights to all the asylum seekers. That's what they are arguing. But Indian government is having its own concern. Indian government is, though it is having a good record, though the moral system of the country is preaching this Atiti Devo Bhava, but still Indian government is having some concerns. And why India was not signed this convention in the year 1951? Because there are some problems are there in the 1951. Because if you see the 1951, at that point of time when the United Nations Convention on Refugees were framed, there are two problems. One is the geographical aspect, and second one is about this time or temporal aspect, time aspect. That means what they said in the 1951 convention is, those people, and it is completely focused on the northern hemisphere or the northern part of the world, and they forget about the southern part, because at that point of time most of the southern parts are still under the colonial rule. So it mostly focuses on northern part, and it has fixed a time called 1st January 1951. That means the people who migrated prior to 1st January 1951, that too mostly Europeans, and they will get a protection under this convention. What is the reason? And at that point of time India thought like, this is to help the European countries, because during the Second World War lot of countries have devastated, and lot of people from the European countries, they have started spreading to different countries, and in order to provide those people they have brought the 1951, but not to provide not to save the entire humanity. And why you have only put this 1st January 1951? Tomorrow any other conflict may happen, tomorrow any type of rights violation may happen, tomorrow someone is going to be persecuted, and 1951 original convention has not addressed those problems. They have only addressed the problems of the European, that too the victims of the Second World War. That is the reason why India has not signed that agreement, because it is something, it is Eurocentric, and later they have used it as the tactic of the Cold War. But in the year 1967, they have brought a protocol. With that protocol, they have removed this geographical aspect and they have removed this 1951 January. Because if you see, when Indian partition was happened, at that point of time, 1951, your convention has not at all helped to the people who become refugees during the partition of India. That means post that it came in the 1951, but that whatever the partition, the problems are there, that has continued over a period of time. But you haven't addressed that. At that point of time, you are a new body, but still you haven't taken care about our problems, which has continued 1947, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53. So that is India's concern. That is India's concern. So, but why India today is not interested to sign again this convention? Why don't want to sign the convention? Because India is having its own problem. India is having its own problem. The main foremost problem is about security. If I allow everyone, maybe it may pose security threat to India. Maybe internal security, because India is facing such a problem. India is facing such a problem because some of the groups are now become like a separatist forces. Separatist forces. So the security is the biggest problem that India is having. Apart from the security, we are having the demographic problem. Demographic problem. If you see the state of Assam, you can understand how strong this demographic problem is. Lot of people came from Bangladesh and they have entered in India, and today they are becoming the majority, and the sons of the soil, they are demanding like these people must be expelled and Assam is belonging to Assamese, not for others. And we have conducted an NRC in state of Assam, that itself has created a lot of political problems. Now the society is divisive, divided, and political parties making politics out of that. It has become a political issue. It is bringing divisiveness in the society because one religion is involved in there. So these demographies may change. Demographies may change. That is another problem that India is facing. That is why it don't want to. Next, if you see the borders of India, they are even today still porous. That means there is a chance like it may enter. So suddenly if you enter with one or other pretext anyway, I don't recognize you. Suppose if I have a law to recognize it, then I have to recognize everyone. And another one is this resources. And you can see what is the population of India. It is the second populous country in the world, and it may surpass the China in the few years. And what are the level of resources that India is having? What is the geographical area? There are many countries which are geographically bigger than India, but still their population is less. And the pressure on natural resources is very high. So that is one of the reason. And there is another reason, like we don't have a confidence on this organization called UNHCR. Because this UNHCR, United Nations High Commission for Refugees, it has not served the purpose of India. In the year 1971, when this Bangladesh Liberation War happened, it has not recognized the devastating condition or the persecutions that are happening in the state of Bangladesh, or at that point of time it was the East Pakistan. And when lakhs and lakhs of people, on one hand they are migrating to India, they are illegally entering into India because they want to save their lives, and Pakistani military has suppressed the people, but still this organization has not worked well. So we don't want to believe this organization, we don't want to work under that, because the credential that organization has not good. That's what India's opinion. So because of that reason, because of these reasons, whether it is about the security, mainly security, whether it is about demographic change, whether it is about the borders are porous, whether it is about the stress on resources, and also about this UNHCR, India is not interested in signing that convention. But wherever it is appropriate, wherever it is important, we are ready to provide. But some people are arguing like, no, these refugees are actually, if you looking into your history, in the history you are allowed, the Zoroastrians or Parsis, they have helped India, it has become an opportunity to India. The people who are coming from the outside, they are having some skill set, they are having some good different type of they have the different type of solutions with them, their approach towards the problems are different, their culture is different. So why can't you allow them, and why can't you utilize it for the development of the economy? Because anyway they are going to work in your country, they will contribute for your country. Why can't you use it? Why can't you use it? But the only question is, we have afforded them in the history, but can really India afford today? And how many Indians today are having this skill set? How many Indians are today employable? How much unemployment is there? How much pressure is there on this? What is the dependability ratio in this country? So the point is, can really India afford it? You can saying like, okay, in the history it has become an advantage, you can use that advantage it again. But what is the situation of India, and what was India when we are talking about these Parsis and others? So the argument is good, like we can use them for the economic purpose, but is it going to apply, or is it going to really valid as far as the practical situation is concerned? Can it be really can we really accept, and can we really make them use for the economic development of the country? So we don't know, because we are having some more problems like security problem, the demographic problem, and the resources crunch problem that we have. So the argument may be good, but the point is, practically it cannot carry that much weight, because you need to cater first your own people. So why India is not signing, and why India don't want to bring a law, these are the reasons that they are saying. But some people are saying like, you are raising this security problem, demographic problem, border porous problem. But even though we are having these many problems, we have accepted many people. When you are accepting Tibetan people, don't you have this problem? When you accepted this Chakma people, don't you have this problem? When you accepted this Bangladeshi Hindus, and it also includes Muslims, you don't have this problem. So when you are accepting those people are also, you are having the same problem. But India has already gained enough experience in balancing the providing facilities to the refugees and also maintaining its security. But some people are arguing like, because of those policies today we are getting this problem. You haven't dealt them properly, you have used them for political purposes. That is the reason why today the country is facing this problem. You cannot say like India is having an experience and India can manage well. India has not managed well in the past, that is the reason why we are facing some problems today. This is another type of argument. But overall, in conclusion, I can say India is having its own problems, but India is having an experience. Indian moral system says that we must accept the people who are in dire need, but the only thing is, you need to draft it very carefully. You cannot deny yourself like, no, I don't accept anyone. Perhaps that's not possible in the international level, because today it's a globalized world. But to what extent you can accept, and to what extent, what type of rights you can provide. And sometimes it's not necessary always that you should accept them to India. Suppose let us take the case of Ukraine, and some people are fleeing from the Ukraine. You no need to accept Ukrainians to India, but wherever they are settling, provide some sort of assistance. Whether it is financial assistance or any type of food and other related assistance. Provide some assistance and do your help in a different way. Not that you no need to physically invite them to India, and to what extent you can do, to that extent you can do. and whenever you are settling them down, settling in a proper way. Don't bring these type of problems of demographic change. So the point is, when your moral system is saying that when you have an experience and when you know your concern, can't we devise our own policies in such a way that we can address these problems? So that is what the necessity of the day. Because India wanted to achieve, because India want to be a Vishwa Guru, or India want to be something like a member of United Nations Security Council, we wanted to project ourselves as a great country in the world, and that too by having a past record, that too by having a moral record. You cannot be blamed just because you don't have a legislation. So we must bring some law which will address the concern, and it no need to be like how it was there in the 1951 convention, just according to your own requirements, according to your own preferences, according to your own way of giving the help to the people. In that way, we must bring some sort of legislation by addressing all our concern and by showing once again that India is humane to all the people. So that is what necessary in this 21st century, especially in the ages of conflicts in the world. So this is what about United Nations Convention on Refugees. Thank you.
Amrita IAS Academy.